So why don't we start off? Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what your involvement is
Sure.
there at Kaiser?
Sure. As you know, I'm a physician, and I've been with Kaiser for over 30 years. I started right after residency in pediatrics, and I practiced general pediatrics strictly general pediatrics for probably a good 15 years. And then the last 15 years, I've been involved with IT at Kaiser, initially helping to run some of the regional operational systems in Northern Cal, being a lead physician, and also was involved with regional education and physician education, those two things mostly. So I was involved with the IT part and did a number of very entrepreneurial kinds of things at Kaiser, including developing the company's first national communication forum for physicians, a screen interface for mainframe, things like that. Very entrepreneurial. And then Kaiser at the same time went through several iterations of developing a medical record and looking at commercial record. And so when it finally decided to buy in 2003, it really, once they bought from Epic, the implementation route was pretty well prescribed, so there wasn't as much need for physicians, IT physicians. So I went back to business school in 2002. And the reason is because I was also involved in a number of startups independently at the same time, including some database startups, a Linux startup, an internet name startup, and so on. And through that, I learned that I actually needed some background in business to talk with investors. When I pitch to angels or VCs, you have to have a certain kind of knowledge. And also, I felt that business school would also give me credibility as well as help me build a network. And all three things actually have come true. So I went to business school at Berkeley, graduated in 2005. And at that time, when I came out of business school, and I was still working at Kaiser as a physician, I asked around to see if there were any positions for MD, MBA. And it turns out that that's the kind of profile that most people will recruit for a hospital administrator. And it really doesn't recognize the tech part. So I was really not very encouraged. Even at Kaiser, within the medical group, there was not much of a career path until this position became available in 2006, which is a brand new group that was started by IT, called the Innovation and Advanced Technology Group. At the same time, it was started, they also created an innovation center, a physical center, called the Garfield Innovation Center in San Leandro near the Oakland Airport, which is a huge facility that has a lot of space for prototyping, care delivery spaces, care delivery workflows, things like that. So as part of that, this IT group was formed to do the think tank part of it. And they were recruiting for analysts or senior analysts. So I applied and joined at that time, and this was 2006. And our job was basically look into the future and health information technology. And so we did that. We looked at over 1,500 technologies in the last some years. And I would say we've probably done deep dives into about 200 or 250 of them, of which 10 have gone into production. At the same time, and basically these technologies are basically all over the map. They're focusing mostly on telehealth, mobile health, and the last 2 or 3 years on big data and analytics. But we've also looked at robotics and virtual reality, augmented reality, social media, clinical gaming, and gamification. We've looked at, genomics, looked at digital pathology, new kinds of imaging, all kinds of stuff that impacts IT, network and storage. So that includes almost everything these days, but we looked at a lot of things. The 3 areas I mentioned was a major focus. Simultaneously, since 2006, we've also run a very active internal seed investment fund for any employee that has a good idea and would like to test it. they apply for an innovation grant, and the grant has to be used within 6 to 12 months. So it's a rolling basis, rolling quarterly grant program, and they can apply for angel level funding. We've had over 600 applications and funded 79 projects, of which 14 have gone into production. Of course, we also probably learn a lot more from the ones that don't. We learn about, failures are part of innovation, so we learn a lot about technologies and what fits, what doesn't fit. Even something that really sounds good, may not fit at Kaiser. It's basically a match between the technology and the system, and sort of the strength and weaknesses of the customer that you're trying to fit it into. So for Kaiser, the classic story for failure, and this is a true story, was that, and I think I mentioned this to the actually did an interview after the Stanford program, is that we had this product that was introduced a couple of years ago called I think it was called a mobile medication cart, where they basically like a locking medication unit onto a computer sub-wheel, a wireless laptop, essentially the cart that you push around to different rooms. And so the nurses really liked that, and they wanted to buy it, but they decided to test it at the Garfield Center. So we brought the technology in. We brought 2 units. I think we brought a couple of dozen nurses and mocked it up just like in a hospital with all their jobs they had to do and everything with the patients in the bed and stuff. And within 5 or 10 minutes, they found out they couldn't use it because there's a number of reasons. It was too heavy. They couldn't maneuver it. They couldn't walk away from it because of the medications in it. And if the doctor changes the order, they have to go back to the bedroom anyway. So it was an example of technology the nurses wanted because it looked good in PowerPoint, but it was not what they needed, and they found out through the simulation testing. And that's the kind of testing I think that companies are really hungry for, but they really don't have that opportunity in most healthcare organizations because they're not set up to do that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because we told that story, and we've had over 50,000 visitors to the Garfield Center in the last 1 year, 42 countries. And one of the tour groups was from a major healthcare organization, healthcare provider. And so when the tour guide told that story, one of the folks actually turned real gray, like ashen gray. And so they pulled them aside, and apparently they had just bought 3,000 units. And they were having the same problems that we found in simulation, that is, nobody used them because they can't use them. And in fact, they tried to retrofit these units, and they spent more money to do that. They still know nobody uses them. So the bottom line was that this visitor told us that they wish they had something like the Garfield Center, because the thing about technology and healthcare, there isn't any consumer reports, there's no underwriter's lab, there's nothing that gives you any clue whether it's going to work in your system. And, given the fact that healthcare is so expensive, the technology is so expensive, that's an inexcusable waste of money, when you buy something like that and you can't use it. And so what happens? Eventually it raises the cost of healthcare. So having a test facility is actually very common in other industries. Just in healthcare, it's not very common. And it wasn't common until Kaiser built this facility, because I don't think people actually have thought of technology as a differentiator in healthcare until this past decade. But it's becoming a very, the hope of the future. And so it's become a huge differentiator, both for providers, for regulators, for payers, for government, and everybody else.
Yeah, you hit a good point where I see a lot of, you always document the successes. So, but very rarely do we document the failures, so that we can learn from that and modify that. Because when you were first telling the story, I was wondering whether you were able to modify that system at all, to be able to make it work. And somebody actually did that, and they went up spending even more money. And did that even work with all the retrofitting?
No, it wasn't. They wasted money and they spent millions, and it did work. The thing though, the shame of it is that if the manufacturer had a facility like the Garfield Center to test it, where there were physicians willing to come in and test it, nurses willing to come and test it, it would have been better for the manufacturer as a while as customers. And this is the kind of thing that's so rare in healthcare, because in healthcare the mindset is no risk. You cannot fail. And so that is translated from clinical care into every other area of healthcare. And if you look at healthcare, the IT part of it is a different culture. You go to any other software company, hardware company, bugs are just part of the picture. It's constant iteration, constant improvement. How do you merge that with a healthcare culture that says no failures allowed? And for good reason. So I think it's always going to be a debate. And what's been missing in my mind from this debate is that not a lot of physicians have been involved. It's mostly been technologists, IT folks, investors, universities, and so on and so forth. But not a lot of physicians. And I think to the negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see the same thing. Now, what are your thoughts about like telemedicine and mobile health and that sort of stuff?
I think the macro trends are driving us towards those technologies. I mean, there are just not going to be enough doctors and not going to be enough lab techs. I think there's going to be more patients with healthcare reform in 2014, first of the year. And to take care of that many patients with the same number of facilities and the way we're set up, most healthcare organizations is just not sustainable. And I think there are a lot of trends driving us towards technology, and I think it's a good thing. But I think that, you think about telehealth, telemedicine, it's been around for like at least 2 or 3 decades. That's long as I can remember. So the question of telehealth is not a question of technology, it's a question of why hasn't it taken off? Even though it makes so much sense for some things. Things like telestroke, things like mental health, things like dermatology, those are proven use cases for telehealth. And you look at the factors that are stopping it from being adopted and widely, probably the number one factor is reimbursement. Most of these things are not well reimbursed, so they're reimbursed on an exception basis by CMS and by any payers. Not so much by the enlightened payers or the ones that are forming ACOs, accountable care organizations. Those folks kind of get it, but most of the time, telehealth, telemedicine is not really paid for fully, and because of that, I mean the incentive isn't there for physicians to adopt. So that's one issue, is reimbursement. Mm-hmm. The second issue is it's not a standard of care yet. That's a pretty big issue because if it's not a standard of care, if nobody knows how to define what is good telemedicine, then if you do something that turns out to have a bad result, how do you defend yourself in court? So that's a huge issue. It's a standard of practice. It's a legal issue. Regulatorily, there are barriers like interstate licensing barriers and things like that. Kaiser would love to have a center of excellence for a super specialty in one part of the country that can service the entire country. That would be very cost efficient. But you can't do that. Most specialty, the vast majority of them require local licensing to protect their own doc. It's very understandable, but it's not compatible with where technology can take us. Because if you think about it, the local specialist, let's say in New Mexico, New Mexico, you have to have a New Mexico license to practice telemedicine there, even though your patient is there, but you're in California. So the protecting specialists, I think they're short-sighted because what happens is that by requiring a license, interstate license, they're preventing their own specialists from having a broader scope of practice. It's not a reciprocal thing. So their own specialists actually have a much broader practice across state lines if they would miss those interstate licenses. The interesting thing about that is that the government has figured it out. The VA and the DOD, they have an exception, and they've passed congressional regulation that says basically any patient in the VA can see any doctor anywhere, as long as that doctor is accredited at a local VA. And so they have tremendous telemedicine, and that's one of the reasons they can have it, because they have this exception to the interstate licensing barrier. So that's regulatory, right? So that's reimbursement, standard of practice, regulatory. There's other issues.
And you said that was with the VA?
I'm sorry?
You said that was
the
with
VA
the,
and,
which
yeah.
one?
So the VA and the DOD, the Department of Defense,
Yeah.
they have this especially congressional or federal exemption where any doctor in the VA system can treat anybody anywhere within the VA system.
Huh. Okay.
State lines,
Is that because it's is that because it's more military focused?
No, it's they treat dependents as well. So the reason this exemption is because the VA is a federal agency, and so they were able to get that exemption from Congress or whoever is in charge of that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they don't have to deal with the local licensing barrier. You can imagine, if one of the doctors to get licensed in 50 states, they probably wouldn't practice at the VA. So, anyway.
Yeah. Now you also touched upon reimbursements. So I know reimbursements has been it's been coming up more and more. I've seen. Like I know the doctors don't get reimbursed if they're reading emails.
Right.
So is that? Do you see that trend changing where they'll be reimbursed for things like, viewing their social media to interact more with patients, or reading emails, or doing telemedicine, or mobile health, or something like that?
I think the reimbursement will change, and it'll follow the sort of the ACO trend. Do you know the accountable care trend, accountable care organizations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know the whole principle behind it is the aligned incentives, kind of like a Kaiser model. So I think as more and more people do that, as people are trying to save money, the federal government and other payers are trying to save money, so they're trying to realign the incentives with the ACOs, and I think it's going to be a win-win for patients. But the thing with the ACOs, as they try to save money, they'll start to look at the financial reimbursement for telehealth, because if they can incentivize that and they can take care of patients with the same or better quality, but with less time or less travel or more conveniently, or deploy the specialists over a wide area, like across the state or something, then that obviously has a lot of cost efficiencies built into it. So they're going to start paying for that because they're at risk if they spend too much money. So they're going to start paying for it. So that's one thing. But the second thing is there's been an issue with reimbursement. Actually, two other issues. The first issue is that the telehealth literature has not been very robust. The literature itself has been contradictory. The criticism about the telehealth literature is all the studies, the older studies, are all very small. They're all short-term, and they're not comparable. So it's very hard to understand what the outcomes are. There have been about 4 or 5 landmark studies for congestive heart failure, monitoring the whole blood pressure and the weight scale, things like that. And those 5 studies contradict each other. Some say it's less expensive, some say it's more expensive, some say it prevents hospitalization, some say the opposite, and so on and so forth. So it's hard to talk about reimbursement when you don't have a clear outcome argument. So, but I think there's hope in that area because the last couple of years, I've seen a couple of studies bringing up the possibility that maybe the criteria are, maybe the outcomes measures we're using are wrong for telehealth. And that's a good possibility because, when they first measured telehealth outcomes, they looked at very traditional outcomes like length of hospital stay, mortality rate, readmission rate, those kind of things that are easy to measure. But now people are saying maybe the benefit of telehealth is not those metrics, it's different metrics like hospital efficiency, or like patient retention, patient loyalty, things like that are actually harder to measure. But maybe that's where the benefit is. So people are starting to rethink telehealth. You know the Gartner Hype Cycle, any chance?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Yeah, it's a 5-phase cycle. Technology goes through. There's a technology trigger. They go to the peak of inflated expectations. They drop into the trough of disillusionment. Then they go up the slope of enlightenment, and they end up with a plateau of productivity. Those are the 5 phases of the Gartner curve. And telehealth right now, telemonitoring is right in the trough of disillusionment. solution that it's been those really high for many years until people started to understand what the real benefits were. So it's actually good that it's an tropical solution because people are now really asking what are the benefits of telehealth. And I think they have to have that argument before they can really go whole hog and use it, because when you ask doctors, one of the first questions they'll ask is what's the evidence? What is the evidence that it actually is better than the way I've taken care of the patient? And that's a hard question these days to answer. So you see studies coming in the literature, and they'll have things like, oh, we save money, like, we're reducing rehospitalization, or we reduced this and that, or whatever. But Kaiser did his own studies. It turns out that the quality outcomes were no better than what we were already doing. And so what you have to do is, when you look at the studies in literature, you have to look at what is their control group. And if the control group is like nothing, then obviously they're going to be better than nothing. But the question is, are they better than a good disease management program from a evidence-based care provider like Kaiser? So Kaiser right now, it doesn't mean that we can't use it. It's just the outcomes may need to be different and measured differently. And right now, Kaiser has probably over 160 pilots going on across the country in telemedicine, telehealth. So it's a very active area of concern and interest for us, but there's no national consensus yet. Maybe it'll be coming soon.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what do you see the future of health tech? Where do you see all this going?
I think it's very exciting. I mean, I think there's a lot of technology coming in from non-traditional domains, like nanotech and augmented reality and things that are robotics, things that haven't traditionally been involved very much with healthcare directly. So I think it's very exciting. We're seeing a lot of these technologies, and the consumer technology, of course, coming into healthcare. And a lot of them will enable us to deliver care, sort of outside the hospital and clinic in a much better way. For instance, one of the interesting things, one of the tools that we're actually, hopefully we'll get one, is Google Glasses, Google Glass, the augmented reality glasses.
Mm-hmm.
If you use that, let's say, for an elderly patient, and they could look at their pill model, and if the glass could recognize their barcode and tell the elderly person, oh, you should take this right now, or you should get it refilled, or whatever, or you shouldn't take any more because the doctor changed your prescription. That's powerful. That's a point of care. It's automated. It doesn't require healthcare resources. It's a way of assisting and enlarging the kind of care we can provide. And it can also help us develop a new kind of relationship with our health plan members. Not just like we're just here when you get sick, but also we can advise you, what kind of food to eat, what kind of diet, what kind of exercise, those kind of things, when you need it. And that kind of contact is now possible through mobile devices. And the future mobile device, could be, I mentioned it at Stanford, that it could be the Google Glass, or it could be something else. It could be your clothes, it could be your shirt, whatever, whatever it could be. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's so many possibilities that I think things that will make it into medicine faster are the things that do not touch clinical care. Anytime that you have a device that actually changes clinical care, that's when it goes under the FDA, and it's going to take a long time. But everything else is very exciting.
Yeah, I saw the same potential with the Google Glasses. So you could do so much with that. Like you could be working on a patient and getting instant information without having to take your eyes off of something. So it'd be great for, like surgeries where you maybe need some help, or maybe even looking at diagnostics. So it would probably be a great benefit for, let's say it is a surgeon. That's where I was thinking that was the greatest benefit. They're working on a patient, and you could see all the vitals at the same time that you're working on the patient. You don't have to have somebody read them off to you. You could see them all right there.
Yeah, or you could, even more advanced, just like you could see a 3D model or inside the patient, superimpose over the patient, where you can see where the tip of your tool is, even though you can't see it physically. You can see it on your glasses, how close it is to a certain vessel or a tumor or whatever. All those applications are very sophisticated, not with us yet, but I think it's only a matter of time that will allow surgeons to be a lot more accurate, have greater capabilities. In fact, it brings up the issue. Augmented reality and other technologies does allow people to essentially improve the capabilities of the human being. So you kind of wonder about ethics and about the digital divide that it'll raise for those who have and those who don't have. It brings up a lot of issues, but it's very interesting. Technology has never been slowed down to concerns toward ethics. It should be.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see where the Google glasses go, because I think they're still a little bit too bulky. But they're talking about adding those onto standard glasses like sunglasses and things like that. So if they can add that in with without adding on a lot of extra bulk, then that would be a huge benefit.
Yeah, and you're talking about the battery, especially the battery is the issue.
Yeah. Right.
But I think there's so many possibilities. The other possibility is environmental computing, which is computers right in the environment. You sort of talk to your house and talk to your car. That kind of interface, you gesture and stuff. Eye gaze. I've seen a lot of those coming out at CES the last couple of years. Tracking where you're looking and trying to deduce from that if you're confused or not, things like that. Which I think is really amazing because it enlarges the market. That when you include elderly people who cannot use a mouse or they don't have good vision, it really allows them to expand the interface with the computer without having to do those things.
Okay. Well, thank you.